Hello and welcome to the web show on AmericanSportsNet.com. I'm Jorge Andres. Today we reflect on a team and a coach that changed the basketball landscape forever. This Saturday, March 19th, will mark the 50th anniversary of Texas Western's NCAA championship. 5 decades ago, the Miners changed history by winning a national title with an all-black starting lineup, something that had never been done in college basketball before. To commemorate the national champion, this year's UTEP team wore throwback 1966 uniforms from their championship year during the Conference USA tournament. To this day, the Miners remain as the only Texas team to win an NCAA tournament title. As you'll see in this feature, the story of the 1966 Miners was just a stepping stone that changed the game of basketball and the lives of student athletes everywhere.
Today, an all-black starting lineup isn't notable, and that's the enduring testament to Texas Western's NCAA basketball championship 50 years ago this month.
It was unique. It was unbelievable, but my husband always believed that when he got on the floor, you could always win. He was very competitive, so to him, because he was a very calm-natured guy and very humble, he said it was just meant to be, and I think so. When they named the movie Glory Road, I think they did it exactly right because God touched it, and it keeps going year after year. Every time we think something is over, we still have a celebration, and that's all about God. But these guys deserve it. They were brothers, they loved each other, and they were a unique group.
The Miners made history as the first team to win the title with an all-black starting lineup, defeating all-white Kentucky 72-65 on March 19, 1966.
It's just hard to describe, really. I think back on all the honors and going to Washington and New York and everything with the team and having our wonderful fans turn out at all the games. It's just hard for me to describe it.
The Miners remain the only Texas team to win the NCAA men's basketball championship, led by head coach Don Haskins.
We were in a little high school with 600 people in the town. That's where we started. And I just thought, this is fun, even though Don had to drive the school bus, and I had to also take kids to school. But that's where we started, and then we ended up here. I was in El Paso. I thought it was just awesome that we would be, and we moved into Miners Hall, and I loved it. I loved being in Miners Hall.
Coach was different, and they had to adjust to him and also to the players because these were city guys, and they weren't local. They played different, but he had the ability and the talent to bring them together as a team. They loved each other, they played as a team, and that's why they won. It was a team effort.
I think that Don would say, oh, it's no big deal. And we, of course, feel like it is, and I always will, but Don would have poo-pooed it, he would have not. He said, this is too much, yeah.
The Miners' victory helped open the door to the integration of college athletics. A year after Texas Western's triumph, the Southeastern Conference admitted its first black basketball player, though Kentucky, their roster remained all white until 1969.
It wasn't just a basketball game, it was the impact it had nationwide on sports and academics. It's not just about a kid that can play ball well, but if he has the talent, after they won, they had the ability to go to these major universities because the doors opened up for them. And that was the impact nationwide. So these kids now, they have so much to be thankful for, and they have the talents, but they also have this as a stepping stone and can always look back and say, this is where we came from.
The team was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2007 and inspired the book and film Glory Road.
Monica McNutt reporting on that piece. Now, as you saw, that 1966 Miners team changed everything. And to talk more about that team and what it meant to college basketball, we are pleased to welcome into the program former college basketball guard under Adolph Rupp for the University of Kentucky, who played in that championship game on March 19th in 1966 against Texas Western and is now a member of Kentucky's SEC Legends class of 2016. Mr. Larry Conley. Larry, thanks so much for the time, and let's get right into this. That 50-year anniversary of this historic game is Saturday. What was it like to play in a game with that kind of historic magnitude?
Well, it was important for me from a couple of standpoints. One was the fact that I was a senior that year and had the full realization that I was not going to be moving on to go play in the NBA or the ABA, which happened to start a little bit later. So it was very important for me. But equally important, as important, was the fact that it was one of the opportunities we had to give Coach Rupp another national championship. He hadn't won one since 1958. And I thought we were in a pretty good position to get it. But sometimes things don't work out the way you think they're going to. And while we played just an average basketball game, I thought Texas Western played an outstanding game, particularly on the defensive end. There was so much going on during that period. And it was one of the better games, I think, that certainly Texas Western had played all year. I would like to have played better, and I'd like to have won, but we didn't.
Sure, and like you mentioned, there was a lot going on surrounding that game. What was that atmosphere like going into that contest?
Well, I think some of the perpetuation of what has gone on with this game over a 50-year period has really been carried on by the media. I'm not sure that there was as much going on around that game as everybody wants to talk about. It seemed to have really mushroomed after the game was over with, and maybe perpetuated by a lot of what Coach Rupp was about, and maybe the times that were swirling around with regard to all of the legislation involving desegregation and also the Voting Rights Act at that time. There was so much going on politically that I think sometimes the game, while everybody tried to tie this game to all of the political goings on at that time, we never, as players, and I'm going to speak for the Kentucky side of it, and I think probably if you interviewed any of the Texas Western players, you would get the same reaction. There was nothing in the way of any racial implications or animosity toward their players to us or us to them. It was just simply a national championship game and a bunch of 20 and 21-year-old guys trying to win a national championship.
Let's talk about that national championship game, and particularly your squad and your side. You played alongside Pat Riley on that team. What kind of a player was he?
Pat was a terrific athlete. He was one of the best athletes I think I've ever played with, maybe even ever been around. He was a terrific football player too. I don't know if you know this or not, but the word was that Coach Bear Bryant had actually offered him a football scholarship to come to Alabama to become the football quarterback down there after Namath had left. And he chose Coach Rupp in basketball, and I guess hindsight is what we think it is, and he made the right decision because he certainly has been very successful. But he was a terrific player. Did not have a good game that night. He did not shoot the ball well, had a foot injury, and he suffered with it all weekend. But you can't blame the game just on one guy. But he was a terrific player and had a wonderful season that year, along with Louis Dampier, who was our guard, and also went into the Basketball Hall of Fame just a couple of months ago. So played with two pretty good players.
Two great players on that squad, including yourself. Now, let's talk about the coach. How about Adolph Rupp? What was it like to play under Coach Rupp?
Oh, I think he was emblematic, I think, of a lot of coaches at that time. He had a lot of success, more than anybody in the country at that time. He had won so many games, and of course there have been a couple of coaches that have passed him up now. Jim Boeheim, Dean Smith, Jim Calhoun, all of these guys have gone by him now, and of course they're all Hall of Fame members too. But Coach Rupp was a tough disciplinarian, but I think it was really true of all of the coaches back then. His philosophy was, if you can't get it done, just get out of the way and I'll put somebody else in there. Today's coaches, I think, probably are as demanding as Coach Rupp was. He was very demanding, verbally, could let you have it at any time, everybody always said to me, he said, how could you play for him? I said, because I respected him. I had a great deal of respect for him. And I said, if you think I liked him every day, you would be dead wrong. I said, there were days when I couldn't stand to be around him because when he would unload on somebody, I mean, he would go after him. And I got my share of it, trust me.
All signs of a great coach, which is why he's legendary in college basketball. Now let's talk about the other side of the court. Let's talk about Bobby Joe Hill of Texas Western. He was their leading scorer and a key player on that championship roster. What was it like to play against him?
Well, it was kind of an interesting game from this standpoint. I think that in my lifetime and all the basketball games that I played in, that was the most frustrating game that I've ever taken part in. And partly because they were so good defensively, and I will give Hill a lot of credit for that. He stole the ball at midcourt twice, back-to-back, once against Dampier and once against Tommy Cron, who was the other guard. I must tell you this because I've said it 100 times. I never saw the ball stolen either time because I was going down to get in position to get ready to run our offense. I turned around and looked, and the ball was going the other way. And when we called the timeout, I turned around and I said, what happened? I said, why didn't you guys bring the ball up? And the ball was stolen at midcourt, so we never got into our offense. Partly he was a great defender, but also made it very, very difficult for guys to maneuver. I mean, he was and this goes back to Coach Haskins, who was the coach at Texas Western. His ability to get his guys to play a good team defense. And I think Hill was really the leader of that. He was the leading scorer that night, but there were a couple of guys, David Ladden, who was their center, their big 6'9" center, was terrific on the inside, as was one of their forwards, a guy by the name of Austin Artis. It seemed like every time we would get close to them, I don't think we ever did get the lead in the second half, that they always went to Artis, and the Artis always hit the big shot that helped them maintain that lead. Everybody talks about Hill, but I always felt like Artis was the guy that really kind of kept them in the game.
Yeah, that team was really special, and it translated on the court as well. You mentioned Coach Haskins. Coach Haskins and the Miners changed that college basketball landscape, and you went on in your career as well in broadcasting. Now, through the years, how have you seen the game develop with that integration of not just black athletes, but other minorities like Hispanics and Asians through the years from 50 years ago to today?
Well, I think there are a lot. You've got to consider a lot of angles on this. I mean, you've got to remember that I think basketball, of all the sports that we play in the world, may be the one sport that we can look at Europe, look at Asia, look at South America. You have players playing basketball now in great numbers, unlike any of the other sports. Soccer may be the biggest, but it is not that way in the United States. Soccer is not a sport that we play and we look at as one of the major sports. But it certainly is around the world. But basketball is known and played by a lot of people. And I think while I have watched for years as a broadcaster the game develop and really get better, I think the play of the foreign-born players has really contributed a great deal to basketball. I mean, you can look at the NBA rosters today. I'll bet you 25% of the teams' rosters are made up of foreign-born players now. While they have the draft here in the United States in the NBA, and they do take a lot of college players, but they do take an awful lot of foreign-born players that have really contributed. And I think that's helped make the game better. I really do. And you see the coaches have improved so much. I mean, they're just so creative. The way they do things. I mean, we talk about the pick and roll now. I mean, it's been a fixture in the NBA for years, and now at the college ranks we use it probably as much as the pros do. And it's become kind of the main offense that everybody uses when they can't get a basket in the first 15 or 20 seconds of the college game. That's what they go to. So the game has improved. It's a worldwide game. We have coaches who've gotten so much better and really do a terrific job of teaching. I think the game of teaching basketball has gotten better too, and that only bodes well for the players coming up.
I think you're spot on there, Larry. The game has developed certainly from 50 years ago to now where we see it both in the collegiate and on the NBA level. Finally, I want to end with something about you. Now, you were honored at the SEC tournament as Kentucky's representative on the SEC Legends class of 2016. It's a phenomenal honor, and congratulations to that. But I ask you, what's it like to be a member of a coveted fraternity like that?
Well, you kind of say that. I really appreciate it. This is the 17th, I think it was the 17th class that they brought along in the Legends. And I had some guys ask me, why didn't you get on there sooner? And part of it was because I was doing so many broadcasting, so many SEC games, that I didn't feel comfortable doing that, going out there and representing Kentucky when I was still working and doing SEC games for ESPN and Fox and Raycom and a number of other regional broadcasters. So I just told them, I said I would not accept any invitation to go out there until I was done with my broadcasting. And after 42 years, I decided this past year to give it up. So this is the first winter that I didn't have a single basketball game to do. In fact, I probably have watched more basketball this year than I ever did when I was broadcasting. It's been great fun for me. I do miss the games. I miss the passion inside the venues when the college kids are there. I miss visiting with the coaches, the players, the strategy of the game, the great play of the game. All of that, to me, was the most important part of what I did. The game was far and above anything else that we did. And I hope that we conveyed that to the people who watched.
You had a great career as a player and a great career as a broadcaster. The Wildcats representative on the SEC Legends class of 2016 was a starting guard under Coach Adolph Rupp as a member of that 1966 Wildcats team who played against Texas Western in the national championship and is part of this great 50-year anniversary on Saturday, March 19th. I'm talking about the one and only Larry Conley. Larry, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it too.
The Miners of Texas Western, national champions with a final score of 72-65 over the Kentucky Wildcats. A game that 50 years ago Saturday was forever etched in sports fans' minds. We hope you enjoyed this history lesson in college basketball, and we urge you to click below to watch that feature in its entirety and also to join us next week as well. Give us a follow on social media, why don't you? @Live on ASN, both on Twitter and on Instagram. You can also follow me at IBThatRaspOnTV for news, features, highlights, and more. Stay locked to AmericanSportsNet.com. Your team, your passion, your network.